Crickets have a way, it seems, of keeping me from dreaming dreams. I find it hard to fall asleep midst chirp, 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 and cheep, cheep, cheep. Still, I truly must admit that once they get the hang of it, what can soothe like a cricket tune, played well beneath an August moon? And so they came that still pre-dawn and set up right on my front lawn. Violins, violas, and a big bass drum. The cricket chamber group had come. Baton slicing through the air, the cricket leader led with flair. Strains of Haydn filled my room, drowned out at times by a loud boom, boom. I yelled from my bedroom sill. You're sourer than a pickled dill. That drum just doesn't sound so good, and it's waking up the neighborhood. Since when, I continued looking glum, does a chamber group have a big bass drum? Violins, violas, cellos, true, but a big bass drum? I'm surprised at you. The musicians chirped and scratched their wings, not quite sure at this turn of things, wondering why they might sound bad. All eyes turned toward the drummer lad. Standing high on a blade of grass, dwarfed by a drum of enormous mass, stood the tiniest of the cricket group. His name was Brent, but they called him Oop. Oop, it seems, got his nickname made for improvising as he played. When half notes were what he should play, Oop banged whole notes all the way. Add to that Oop's drum to tote, and that Oop couldn't read a note, then maybe you might come to know why the big bass drum just had to go. Out, the leader's voice shot through. Chamber music's not for you. Violins, violas, cellos, come. Let's get away from that big bass drum. And so the cricket chamber band marched right off to my neighbor's land. Now left alone near my front stoop was the big bass drummer, little Oop. Poor little guy, I thought. What now? What are you going to do and how? Well, I yawned. Good luck, I said, as I crawled back into my cold bed. What happened next does seem to spring from birds overheard while gossiping. It must be true, for birds can see, perched way up high in a maple tree. Seems that Oop, with his drum in tow, then journeyed to and journeyed fro, in hopes he'd hear, "Hey, what's the fuss? Come along and play your drum with us." But each time Oop would bang his drum, it sent them scrambling on the run. "Go away," they'd shout, and none too nice. "Go play your drum on the polar ice." So on he'd drag his drum along, just aching so to play a song. But none could stomach Oop's tin ear. They'd all shout, "Hey, get out of here!" Then one night in the August heat came the rhythmic tread of marching feet. Stretched far out in a grassy groove, some army ants were on the move. Tramp, 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 they came, the sergeant shouting out a name. "Horowitz, if it takes all night, you'll learn your left feet from your right." On they marched without a fault until they came to a sudden halt. For in a spot they'd hoped to come stood little Oop and his big bass drum. "Hey, who are you?" the sergeant cried. "A drummer, lad," little Oop replied. "Could I just please provide the beat for all your million marching feet?" The sergeant shook his head and spat. "I'll have to ask the colonel that. Now meanwhile move and let us through. We've still got marching left to do." And so, from what the birds have said, who saw it all from overhead, wherever there are marching feet, you'll hear a drum pound out the beat. Be it ants that march or us by gum, there'll always be a big bass drum, played by an Oop or a George or a Grace, to stir the heart and keep the pace.